Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Lawrence. When my fiancée asked me if she could have one last night with her ex-boyfriend, after everything we had been through, I was stunned. But instead of reacting with anger or trying to change her mind, I looked at her and said, if that's what you need, okay. I gave her what she asked for, but she had no idea that her request changed everything, and I didn't look back. I met Diane at a book club society, but even in that mix, Diane stood out. There was something in how she carried herself. At first, I thought maybe she just didn't like people. Every time someone tried to make small talk, she kept her answers short, polite, but cold. Still, I found myself watching her curiously. She wasn't easy to read, and that made her all the more interesting. The first time I spoke to her directly, it was during a post-meeting discussion about a book we had just read. She had made a point I really liked, and I used that as my opening. She didn't give me much in return, barely more than a nod and a quick thanks. But I didn't back off. It took a few more club meetings before I finally asked for her number. She hesitated, looked at me for a moment like she was reading me, and then gave it to me. Our first few chats were dry and just surface level. How was your day? What are you reading now? That kind of thing. But over time, the tone shifted, then the messages got longer, and the replies came quicker. Eventually, she started volunteering details without me even asking. That's when I knew we were warming up to each other. One evening, we were texting back and forth when she decided to open up to me. She told me she had just gotten out of a relationship, one that had dragged on for years and left her drained. According to her, it was the kind of relationship that messes with your head and your self-worth. She said it was formative, complicated, and nearly broke her. She wasn't fishing for pity, though. It didn't feel like she wanted to be saved. She just wanted to be honest about where she was emotionally. She told me, clearly, that she was done with anything shallow. If something wasn't real, and if it didn't feel authentic, she didn't want any part of it. She'd been through enough and was tired of pretending. I respected that. I told her I wasn't looking to play games either. My intentions with her were pure. I wasn't trying to rush her or force something she wasn't ready for. I said, if you're not comfortable, that's fine. We move at your pace or not at all. She replied with something simple like, thank you for saying that. That little exchange became the foundation of whatever it was we were building. After a couple of months of spending more time together and slowly letting our guards down, I began to believe Diane had truly let go of whatever emotional ties she had with her ex. She didn't bring him up anymore. Her energy around me was lighter. She laughed more, and she wasn't as distant as she was in the beginning. I took that as a sign that we were moving forward, and it gave me the confidence to take the next step. One evening, we were at my apartment watching a movie and eating some takeaway. I looked at her and thought, this feels right. I immediately asked, do you want to be my girlfriend? She was stunned by how out of the blue that came from. Then she smiled, nodded, and said yes. That moment felt like the sun rising after a long night. From then on, we did everything together. I carved out time from my busy schedule to be with her because I wanted to. I took her to some of the nicest places I knew. Whenever she had something big to celebrate, I showed up with gifts I knew she'd appreciate. I paid attention to what she liked, including moments that mattered to her, and I made sure to be thoughtful in how I showed love. And to be fair, she didn't just take, she gave too. In her own way, Diane showed that she loved me. She met my energy, and that meant a lot to me. It reinforced what I believed. This wasn't one-sided. We were building something real, something steady. We dated for over a year, and during that time, our lives became deeply intertwined. We created a routine and a rhythm. I trusted her. I trusted us. And that trust gave me a sense of peace, a feeling that this love was safe. One weekday evening, I'd left work a little earlier than usual and thought I'd surprise her at her apartment, something I'd done a few times before. Diane always said she liked it when I showed up out of the blue, said it made her feel wanted, so I didn't think twice about it. But the moment I stepped in that evening, I knew something wasn't right. The energy in the room felt heavy. She was sitting on the bed, facing the window, And when she turned to look at me, her eyes were puffy, red, and tired. It looked like she'd been crying for hours. There was no way to pretend nothing was wrong. I asked her immediately what was going on. At first, she just shook her head and tried to brush it off, saying she was fine, but I wasn't going to let it slide. I sat down beside her, looked her in the eyes, and gently said, "Diane, talk to me." That's when she finally let it out. She told me that she'd found out her ex was now dating one of her female friends. And not just dating her, but doing all the things Diane used to beg him to do back when they were together. Weekend trips, art exhibits, picnics, thoughtful surprises. He used to shut her down and call all those things corny. And now here he was doing them with someone else. And worse, someone from her own circle. She said it felt like betrayal layered on betrayal, that it reopened a wound she thought had healed. I listened quietly. And I was stunned. Part of me didn't know how to feel. Here I was, sitting with the woman I loved, watching her break down over a man who supposedly almost ruined her life. I couldn't tell if I should be angry, hurt, or worried. My gut reaction wanted to ask her why she still cared, why this was affecting her so much, but I kept that thought to myself. Instead, I held her hand and reminded her of the life we were building. I told her that people from the past only have as much power as we let them have. I said, let them do whatever they want. What matters is what we have now, this. She looked at me and nodded, said she was grateful to me, that I was nothing like Jay, that she knew she had something good now, and she wasn't going to ruin it by looking back. After that, things went back to normal. We laughed again. We kept moving forward. But that night never really left me. I wouldn't call it a red flag just yet, but it definitely planted something. A quiet question I tried to ignore. Was she really over him? I wanted to believe the answer was yes. After 3 years of being with Diane, I felt that quiet certainty in my chest that told me she was the one. I didn't rush it. I waited until I was sure. And when I got down on one knee to propose, I meant every word. I remember the way she looked at me that day as she said, yes. We didn't want anything flashy, just a modest, meaningful celebration of what we'd built together. Diane insisted we take our time with the planning. She didn't want things rushed, and I respected that. She was very hands-on with the whole process, meeting with the event planner, picking out small details, making sure everything lined up. It made sense. She wanted the day to be perfect, and I supported her fully. But as the date started drawing closer, I would observe more than once that Diane's mind seemed somewhere else even while we were talking. And when I asked about it, she brushed it off as stress. Said weddings were overwhelming, and she just wanted everything to go smoothly. I didn't push. Who doesn't get a little flustered before their big day, right? I also didn't want to create a problem where there might be none. I trusted her. We'd been through too much for me to start second-guessing things now. It was about a month before the wedding. Diane had come over to my place to spend the weekend as usual. I had taken her out to her favorite restaurant that evening, this little Thai place she always raved about. She was in high spirits and everything was perfectly fine. After dinner, we got back to my apartment, took off our shoes, and started cleaning up a bit like we usually did on quiet nights in. Her phone was lying on the bed, screen up. When I was walking past it to grab something from the dresser, I saw a message flash across the screen. Just a notification preview. And that's when I saw the name, Jay. Now, I wasn't born yesterday. I recognized that name instantly. Jay was her ex. I didn't get to read the actual message, but that was enough. So I asked her, "Why is Jay texting you?" She glanced at her phone and said in the most casual tone, "Oh, we're just friends now." I didn't want to ruin the night by turning it into an interrogation. So I brushed it off. But deep down, I just wasn't ready to deal with what it could mean. Fast forward 2 weeks. We were now just days away from the wedding. I had just gotten the news that my request for a month-long leave at work was approved. I wanted time off to get everything in place. I was excited to tell Diane. So I drove over to her place that night. We talked for a bit, ate some leftovers, and then lay in bed. It was one of those quiet nights where you're both just lying there, staring at the ceiling, lost in your thoughts. That's when she turned to me and said, I need something from you. Something crazy. But first, promise me you won't say no. And you won't get mad. Immediately, my gut twisted. When someone starts a sentence like that, nothing good ever follows. I didn't answer her the way she wanted. I didn't promise anything. I just said, go ahead. Tell me what it is. If it's something I can do, I'll do it. She looked hesitant, like she was still weighing her words. But eventually, she let it out. She told me that she needed one last night with her ex. She said she couldn't go into our marriage with any unresolved feelings, and that she needed closure. But she didn't want to do it behind my back. She wanted my permission. In that moment, there were so many thoughts flying through my head at once, I couldn't even form one complete sentence. I just stared at her. Because the truth is, when a woman hasn't let go of her ex, things like this happen. Sometimes it slips out in a conversation like this. And I realized then that even if I told her no, there was nothing stopping her from doing it anyway. She could meet up with him behind my back, call it closure, and I'd be none the wiser. I'd just be the fool at the altar. So I swallowed everything I was feeling and said quietly, if that's what you need, okay. She didn't expect me to say yes. I think, in her mind, she thought I'd explode or beg her not to go. She might have wanted me to stop her so she could feel validated in her confusion. But I didn't give her that. She leaned in to hug me, but I couldn't take it. I turned away. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared into the dark, listening to her breathing next to me. The woman I had planned to marry had just asked me to give her to another man for a night. And no matter what she said, the truth was clear. If she still needed that night with him, she had no business building a forever with me. By the next morning, I had already made up my mind. The relationship was over. I left her apartment early that morning before she even woke up. I didn't leave a note or send a message like I usually do. I couldn't stand the thought of her probably planning how to go meet another man and then return to me like nothing happened. I drove home in silence. By the end of that day, I realized something deeper. I couldn't stay in town. I needed space from everything familiar before I lost my mind. So I packed a few essentials, threw them into my trunk, and made the choice to leave town. I didn't tell a soul. Not my parents, not my closest friends. I was already halfway out of the city when I called my cousin. He lives in a quiet town a few hours away. I told him I needed to stay for a while, and that it had been too long since we hung out anyway. He didn't ask too many questions. He just said, of course, come through. I drove through the night. It was one of those drives where the road feels endless, and your thoughts are louder than the music playing. When I finally arrived at his place, he opened the door with a smile and a hug, and I tried my best to return it, but I was running on fumes. After a shower and a quick bite, I checked my phone, not a single call. Not one message from Diane. That silence told me all I needed to know. In my head, I imagined she'd already gone to Jay's place and spent the entire day with him. That night, lying in my cousin's guest room, I was emotionally drained and mentally stretched thin. I eventually passed out from pure exhaustion, physically, mentally, and emotionally. I had nothing left. When I woke up the next morning, I grabbed my phone and saw I had about 10 missed calls and a bunch of messages, all from Diane. For a split second, my heart jumped. Then I opened her text, and everything in me froze. She said she had come to my place from Jay's place and found I wasn't home. There was no more guessing. She actually did it. That message wasn't just heartbreaking, it was insulting. I didn't reply. There was no need to. Instead, I blocked her number. I blocked every account she had on social media. Then I removed my SIM card and shut the phone off completely. That was it. No room for her voice in my life anymore. I told my cousin not to tell anyone I was staying with him. He asked why, and I finally told him the whole story. He sat there, listening without interrupting, and I could see how shocked he was. But to his credit, he didn't say anything cruel about her. He just looked at me and said, "Man, be strong. You didn't deserve that." When I finally returned home after nearly a month away, I didn't tell anyone. I just wanted to quietly settle back in and figure out my next steps. But as you'd expect, news travels fast. It didn't take long before word got to Diane that I was back in town. I'm not sure who told her, but less than 24 hours later, she was at my front door, knocking. At first, I didn't say anything. I was just wondering what exactly she thought she was going to say that would fix what she broke. She kept knocking. I opened the door, but I didn't let her in. I didn't need her inside my space anymore. I looked her in the eye and told her, calmly but clearly, to go be with her ex. I said, "There's nothing between us anymore. Whatever this was, it's over." She broke down crying right there in front of me, begging me to listen, saying she regretted everything. She told me that going to see Jay was a mistake, that the moment she stepped into his place, she knew it. She said he treated her the exact same way he did before, and everything she thought she missed, everything she thought she needed closure for, was just an illusion. She said I was the best man she's ever known, and that losing me was her biggest mistake. But none of her words moved me. My mind was made up long before she showed up. I let her talk, but I didn't respond the way she was hoping. There are some things you just can't walk back from. She stood there in the hallway for a while, hoping I'd change my mind. I didn't. Eventually, I closed the door. But she didn't stop there. Over the next several days, she tried calling me using numbers I didn't recognize. I'd answer, thinking it was work or maybe a friend, only to hear her voice on the other end. Or she'd send messages from other people's accounts, pleading, saying she still loved me, begging me to give her another chance. But I was done reading texts that made me feel like an option. I blocked every number and every account she tried to use. I had already removed her from my phone and my life. Here's the thing. I know there was no peace waiting for me in a relationship where I had to wonder if I was someone's second best. She made a choice. She prioritized her past over our future. And that's something I could never forget, even if I wanted to forgive. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay grounded, and don't ever settle for being someone's second choice.